Welcome, another episode. Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights here with Rich Klein. We're going to talk about, it's not a dilemma, but a fork in the road of how someone may want to spend their Saturday afternoon, how they want to spend time. Did a short episode a while back about job opportunities within the hobby. And it's, in the sense of making money and enjoying your time. There's different ways to do that. We're going to compare and contrast three of those. But first, thanks to the sponsors, Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication, ComC.com, Rich's employer, Burbank Sports Cards, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Heritage Auctions, Huggins & Scott Auctions, Upper Deck, Panini, and Topps. So, Rich, let me lay out the scenario for you. Welcome to the show. But if I were going to spend from 10 to 4 on a Saturday afternoon at a show, whether it was your show which then would be on a Sunday afternoon, or Sunday morning, but I got 6 hours to spend. I want to enjoy the hobby. But I also would like to make some money. If I were the promoter, if I were a dealer at the show behind the table, or if I was a buyer, browser, roamer around the show. I think you know what I'm going to say, but before I say what would I've actually worn all three of those hats.
So have I.
And so have you. So what is your preference for a 10 to 4 segment on a weekend day, let's say? Compare and contrast, because you could make $600 if you had 200 admissions at $3, or sold the tables and all that stuff. Or if you're selling cards, you could profit let's say plus or minus $100 an hour. That's $600. And if you were a buyer, perhaps you could buy stuff that would be worth $600 more than what you paid for it. So just with that in mind, what's your decision point? Because you've done all three.
I think it depends on the type of show and the circumstance. And as a promoter, what I really enjoyed was greeting the people at the door, seeing what they bought, making sure they had a good experience, making sure that, all the issues are dealt with. And thankfully, I've never really had big issues at my show. I've had a couple minor things. So that's an enjoyable way to make a lot of people happy. To be the promoter. The dealer, you're selling cards, so you're helping collectors or possibly even resellers get what they want, which is fine by me. If you know more than I do on something, by all means, go make your profit. That doesn't
happen very often, but okay.
Well, on some of the modern stuff But I'm okay with that because I've made my money.
Okay. Because you bought right. So you're going to sell at a price that you're comfortable with.
Right. And then as the walker around, which is something I'll do at some of the shows, or at a national, I do some walking around. I'm very comfortable buying cards that I know I'm going to make money on when I bring them back to Dallas.
Right.
So I'm okay with all three.
So it depends.
It depends on the circumstance. I think you get the most enjoyment depending on your personality. Yeah. I think getting a good deal makes you feel the best. So being a collector is good if you really feel you want to make a good deal. If you feel that you want to make the most people happy, it's the promoter. And if you just like turning merchandise, it's the dealer.
I probably did enjoy being a promoter, but that's been, it's 40-something years. I haven't promoted shows since the 70s, early 70s, actually. So that goes way back, which I don't even know if there was admission, or the tables might have been $10 or something. So it wasn't a money-making big opportunity, but it was a lot of fun. And bringing everybody together. I'm a convener a little bit. I enjoy doing that. So just realizing, but it's way more, we're talking about the 10 to 4. That is not the main work of the promoter. The main work of the promoter is beforehand of promoting and lining up the dealers and getting the room set up and all that stuff. And I know you've helped for that. I'd help when I was doing that, but it's still a lot of work in advance to be able to enjoy when the people come in and they have a good experience.
When you talk about the Adot show, we're going to be stuffing the bags this week. So I stay out of the bag stuffing part of it, other than just being there, just to be, hey, Rich, what do we do with this? Put them in the bag. That's basically the discussion. And, enjoying the banter and the camaraderie with the members of the Brotherhood as we're putting the cards in the bag. But other than that, I like to say with the Adot show, I do 99% of the work before the show and about 1% of the work the day of the show.
Well, and which means the show is enjoyable for those who come as well as for you too. And then you're kind of at the first table when people walk in, so you can be the greeter and all that stuff. So that really works for you. I see that. But when you're at a table, I don't feel claustrophobic when I'm behind the table, but I am kind of stuck.
You are kind of stuck. And that's why a lot of dealers,
even if I'm making money,
that's why a lot of dealers like to walk around it, even the biggest shows, because they say they can make more money and not feel that they're stuck behind a table. To me, it depends on the circumstance.
Depends on the type of show.
And the type of show.
Because in the National, there's so many amazing things. Right. Being behind your table would be frustrating if you really were interested in the stuff. Yeah.
Right. But if you're not and you get enough, you get enough cards, and you have so much inventory already that And if you have more help, sometimes if you bring more help, you can get out a little bit too. The other person can get out,
right.
And it's good to have 3. If you can bring 3 or 4 people, that's even better.
Yeah. I mean, you were there, you knew me when when we went to the National as Beckett Publications, we did bring 3 or 4. We brought 30 or 40, it seemed like. But thankfully that allowed you and me to kind of walk around and be free to browse, although it wasn't for buying necessarily, although we did pick up a lot of type cards, but it was, kind of case the place to know that we were on track pricing wise and
right. We did a lot of
be representative of what's going on
in the year
industry.
2000 at the Anaheim National, when our grading comp really took off. I mean, we had, I think, 1 or 2 9.5 Jordan 86.7 Fleers like on the first night, and from there it just exploded. Mark Harwell had come up with the brilliant idea of feeding everybody donuts and coffee in the morning, which actually was a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Nothing gets everybody going better than free donuts and coffee in the morning.
Now, he got donuts for every dealer. I mean, were they Krispy Kremes?
No, I think they
were something else.
I think they were just local.
No, but he basically got so many gross of donuts.
Yes.
Were we selling them or giving them away?
We gave them away.
I think we gave them away, and then I just have a sugar crash about 2 hours after I eat.
But that show we did so well in grading that every person, I think, except for you and me, were called off the grading floor to help grading.
To help because we were overwhelmed.
We were overwhelmed.
It's a good overwhelming.
It's a really good overwhelming. And it was funny. On my first time I went to the National for Comp C, they said, Rich, when you work in the booth? I said, I'm not. And they go, excuse me? I said, no, I'm a lot more valuable to you walking the floor than being at the corporate booth. You have enough help for that. My job's to walk the floor. And I said, and I explained that, well, all these years, Jim wanted me to walk the floor. Now I'm explaining to you why I walk the floor. And they're going to me, are you sure? Yeah. And now from this point on, it's like, Rich, walk the floor. Enjoy.
Okay. We have a mutual friend, Bob Lemke. And Bob Lemke, if I think about because I get a kick out of buying something right.
Yes.
And more of a kick than selling something right. But Bob Lemke was kind of in the middle. He didn't necessarily have to buy it or sell it. He took a photo of it. And so a lot of the standard catalog photos were Bob Lemke doing a little bit like what we did.
Yes.
We generally would try to buy the card so we could figure out how we wanted to size it or front and back or however we wanted to do it. And it really helped. We started the grading because we had physical cards to compare to, not just transparencies or slides. But would you get a bigger kick out of selling something or buying something or just seeing it?
I saw a local collection of a mutual friend of ours. We won't mention his name because of the
I already know who it is. But
you already know who it is.
But I won't blow the whistle.
And we won't blow the whistle. And I go to his house.
Yes.
And he's got a very nice house. And he's got a very nice collection. And I asked him to show me stuff I've never seen before.
Yeah.
This is my old training.
No, that's great.
So he's showing me, and then as the end is like, I'm there 2 hours and it's really been fun. He says, he goes to his safe, pulls out a Wagner.
Yeah.
So I go that night to dinner with my wife. I saw all these really cool things, these 1912 postcards and these.
Yeah.
And by the way, he has a Wagner. Well, my wife, who had not been paying any attention, heard the word Wagner and said, he has a Wagner? And you're burying the lead and you're not talking about that? Honey, I've seen 20 Wagners in my life. I don't need to see another one.
But this other stuff
I've never seen.
Some of which could be one of a kind.
Some of which could be
very,
one of a kind.
very short.
Now that was interesting. She goes, "You're strange."
But again, it's not. But again, the hobby is strong right now. But it's not frustrating to you or me to see a card that is not for sale.
No, not at all.
It's his card. I appreciate that. He was a very, very avid collector and did well enough in his job that he could afford to pay strong prices back in the day, which now look like really, really cheap prices. But again, not frustrated if I don't buy it, if I just see it. But after all those years of doing the price guide and not buying, now when I go to a show and I see something, hey, that's a good deal. I think I can buy it. And then I worry less about the selling. I think if I buy right, and what I'm seeing is that when I go to these shows, there's the people that are selling the cards generally are buying so right that they can pass on the savings a little bit. But it's almost like there's a wholesale aspect to it because they haven't fully sorted things out. They pulled out the very best cards, but there's another level of scrutiny that you're willing to put in
that was the old Tom Reed thing when I bought from Tom Reed. He'd say, I paid $150 for this, Rich, it's $200. I pulled out these 3 cards. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I'm going to make money.
I've done that a few times too. That's a lot of fun. I mean, I like, I like the hunt. And so to sell cards that I already have, that's kind of like anticlimactic. But
yes.
To go through a box of cards, whether it was back in the day when I was looking at 56 tops or now, which could be just who knows what's in there, just looking for interesting stuff, or buying a collection. I've mentioned that, I've actually bought some things from Heritage, but more from Huggins and Scott. There are these lots. If it's just one card, then you know that's the card, that's the grade, that's the value, and if you really need it. But if you buy a whole bunch of cards and you can't really even know every card that's in there, to me that's more fun. And even if I bought some I didn't need, I'll figure out a way to transact them later.
I bought 200 cards last weekend, and then I looked and I said, oh, I screwed up on 3 of them. And it's like, okay, no big deal. I'm going to make enough on the others that the 3 cards I goofed up on for the $1 or whatever it was. Okay, no big deal.
Some of the episodes I was doing a week or 2 ago, perhaps, were the Valentine's things. And so the Valentine's, and it was basically the having an understanding wife. And so I mentioned that, give your wife a hug if she's a collector, but I neglected to say give your wife a hug if she's not a collector too. So just to set that record straight. But when you factor that in for people that have a family, it would seem like being a dealer, if you want to make money in the hobby, then selling cards is what you have to do. And so these guys that are, if they're like me and they say, well, I just love to buy, well, eventually you got to sell or something's got to give. And if you're a promoter, you say, hey, I made all this money, and it may sound like a lot of money by being the promoter, but there was an awful lot of work that went on. You can't divide how much you made by the 6 hours of the show.
No, every part of that has extra things.
stuff.
You're a dealer. You've prepped your cards for sale. You've done something to put them in a box or to put them in a sleeve or to put them in a semi-rigid.
Or not. And if they don't, then they're reducing their labor and they're realizing they're going to have to charge less. And I'm willing to operate in that environment. You are too.
Right.
And so that's, they're trading their time for foregoing some profits. They're going to make a first pass through.
I bought the 200 cards. I finished processing the 200 cards the next day. So some went back into a dime box. Some went into my for sale box.
That's what I'm doing, except that, my for sale box?
They go to ComC.
There's I'll send some stuff to ComC. The problem is the other box is the for sale or giveaway, and that box just sits on the shelf, and I'm running out of shelves. That's why I want to do these eBay experiments, because I have some groups of cards that I think I bought them right to where I can break even. But again, I pulled out cards that I wanted and had some fun with that. So Rich, you are a promoter, and you are a dealer, and you are a card buyer. And I prefer buying, and your final answer?
My final answer is, I think...
Depends.
It depends, but I think card buying is the most fun because the hunt is what's really fun. Even the late Alan Rosen, to him, even to the day he passed...
The find.
He was always looking for the next find.
Right. And actually the selling, we mentioned this, he left money on the table.
Right.
And when you buy it right, then he knew he could make money. And he had his middle people, the people that that he would parlay off his stuff. They were salivating because they knew he bought right, and they were going to buy from him stuff that they liked at a price where they could still make good money.
And I'll leave you with this quote from John Brochi. John would buy a lot of stuff from Alan back in the day.
Yeah.
And John's line of the show is that his goal of the show was to break totally even, because he figured he was making money on what he had a store too, so he had other outlets. Okay. And he had the monthly auction he was running. So if he broke even at a show, he made money from what he sold at the show, and then he was going to make money from what he bought at the show. So for him, breaking even at a show, obviously making money is good, but breaking even was even better because he was going to keep making money for the next run.
Well, I like that. I mean, you got to keep coming up with new inventory. Otherwise, there's so many card shops that did great in their first year because they sold their stock of what they had when they accumulated. Right. But if you didn't reload, your second year is going to be a slump. So. Thanks, listeners. Thanks, Rich. Be back again tomorrow with another episode. Enjoyed visiting about this, and we'll do something else tomorrow. And again, happy collecting.